So, Om Shri Sai Ram, offering my most humble pranams at the lotus feet of our beloved Sai Krishna. So, last week we were looking at chapter 23, Sai Ram, where Swami was talking about the 20 qualities that were actually needed if one wants to gain Atma Jnana or wisdom. So, here the first 12 qualities were discussed, Sai Ram. So, it was humility, absence of vanity, non-violence, integrity, reverential service rendered to the spiritual teacher, patience, fortitude, cleanliness, steadfastness, control of the senses, detachment, absence of egoism, and awareness of the Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, and Dosha. So, Swami says that these are the first 12 qualities. Now, let's move on to the 13th one, which is detachment. So then he spoke of the withdrawal of desire from objects, the absence of yearning. The greed to possess things that you see is caused by egoism. I must have this. I must be proud owner of this valuable thing. This is how egoism prompts. It is a strong cord that binds you to objects. Withdraw the mind and treat all as manifestations of the Lord's glory. Love all things as expressions of His glory, but do not delude yourself into the belief that possessing them will make you happy. That is an illusion. Do not dedicate your life for their sake. Use them for your needs as and when necessary. That's all. So here Swami again says that like we discussed a few chapters before, the feeling that I am the doer. So that is the egoism is the root cause of all the other evils. So here Swami says on the same note, he says that out of ego we'll get the feeling that I must have this, like the greed or avarice that we have. So that is actually prompted by egoism. So Swami says we have to withdraw the mind from all the objects. Although we have learned to look at everything in the world as as a reflection of the Lord, we should not prioritize them over everything else. So that should not be the case, and we should try to use them for our benefit, and then we have to move on. So that's what Swami says. So that kind of an impulse activating you will be a great handicap in your progress towards liberation. Whatever you may acquire as property will have to be given up someday. On that last journey, you cannot take with you even a blade of grass or a pinch of dust. Keep this fact ever before the mind's eye, and then you can realize reality. So here Swami again says that in our spiritual progress, that will be a great hurdle. So we should have the attitude that okay, whatever we acquire in this lifetime, we cannot take it further. So if we have this in our mindset, then we can understand what is true. Then the 14th quality is absence of clinging to family and home. So before birth, one has no relationship with this world and its material objects. Even after death, all kith and kin disappear. This sojourn is just a game played in the interval. Getting fascinated with this 3-day fair is foolish indeed. Desire tarnishes the mind and makes people unfit for higher pursuits. Aspirants who seek liberation and realization must rid themselves of desire, for like grease, once contacted, it sticks and is difficult to remove. So here Swami says we already have in the Bhajagovindam Kate Kanta Kaste Putraha. So every relation in this world is it is temporary thing. So Swami says that this is like a 3-day fair. The world is like a 3-day fair. So getting fascinated with this fair, with a fair or a village carnival, that's like a child, right? We should not be we should be better than like a small child, and we should be able to understand that okay, we are here for a higher purpose, and people who actually seek the liberation or mukti should not be affected by things like family or those kind of things. Then the 15th quality is equanimity. So after this, attention has to be paid also to another virtue, the state of equanimity, of undisturbed peace during joy and grief, prosperity and adversity, happiness and misery. So this is the 15th virtue of a wise one or jnani. So Swami says, whatever happens, that is good things or bad things, and when we have joy as well as grief, we should have undisturbed peace. So that kind of inner mental stability, that is the 15th virtue one should possess. Being elevated or depressed by success and defeat, profit and loss, honor and dishonor is a futile activity. Accept all equally as the grace of God, His consecrated food or prasada. So the mindset that we should have is everything is His prasadam, or everything that is the grace of God. So when we have that, we will not be able to distinguish between one thing as good and another as bad. So that kind of an attitude goes away. So that is the way we have to overcome this, and we have to settle in equanimity. So then Swami gives an example. Just as you wear shoes to tread over thorny places, or hold an umbrella to escape getting wet in the rain, or sleep inside a mosquito curtain to escape the sting of insects, so too arm yourself with an unshaken belief that is confident of the Lord's grace, and bear praise or blame, defeat or victory, pleasure or pain with equanimity. To live bravely through life, this equanimity is declared essential. So here Swami says, like, just how we wear shoes, or hold umbrella, or have a mosquito net. So that is the same way we should have the Lord's grace, and we should think of the Lord, and that is the way we should undergo both sides of the coin in the same way. So this kind of a thing is essential, is what Swami says. And the 16th one is devotion. The next is devotion without any other feeling or thought. When grief overtakes you, you run to God. When difficulty overpowers, you take refuge in the Lord of Venkata. When the joy is restored, you throw him overboard. When you are down with fever and your taste is ruined and your tongue is bitter, you crave for some hot pickle. But when the fever subsides and you are normal again, you do not release the same pickle. Devotion is not a temporary salve. It is the unbroken contemplation of God without any other interposing thought or feeling. Whatever the activity, recreation, or talk, it must be saturated with the love of God. That is undivided, undistracted devotion. We already talked about the kind of devotion that Swami had mentioned, the Ananya Bhakti, that I think even in chapter 9, Auntie used to cover that. So, that kind of an undisturbed devotion is what Swami expects from us. So, Swami says, like, when we tend to only go to God when we have some kind of a suffering, like we pray and we cry to the Lord when we have something affecting us. And then once we are stable in our life and the life goes smooth, we tend to forget him. That's natural, right? So that kind of a thing is not what is mentioned by devotion. So it's not a temporary thing, and it should be like ananya, or unbroken. So that's what Swami says. And like whatever activity we do, it should be saturated with God. So that is Ananya Bhakti. And the 17th one is dwelling in solitude, Ekanta Vasam. So one must be fond of being alone. This does not mean keeping the body in some solitary place, far from the haunts of humanity. There must be solitude and silence in the mind. All its occupants must be forced or persuaded to quit. The mind must be contentless, nirvishaya, and turned away from the objective world. So Swami talks about solitude, or this is not something like a lonely, we go on a journey away from human civilization and stay in a mountain or in the middle of a forest, something like that. So that's not what Swami means. Swami says that our mind should be free of all the things that affect it and all the shackles that bind it. So if we have such a open or a like a empty mind, so that is what is meant by dwelling in solitude, or ekanta vasam. And that quietness is what Swami sees as solitude. And the 18th virtue is absence of interest in the company of others. This is kind of similar to the 17th one, but this is Swami talks about other people's company, the like satsangatve nisangatvam, right? So that kind of absence of interest in the company of others. So Swami says the 18th virtue that helps to promote wisdom is mentioned as the absence of interest in the company of people. That is to say, absence of the desire to mix with people engrossed in affairs that concern the objective world. So one can attain equanimity even in the midst of wild animals, but it is difficult to win it while amongst worldly minded ones. The spiritual discipline will be affected by the company you keep. Good people keep you good, and bad people drag you away into badness. So Swami says, even when we are with animals or something else, we'll be able to be equanimous. But once we are with people who are actually involved and indulged in worldly affairs, we'll easily be dragged away from our mental stability, and we'll move away from what the path of liberation that we are taking right now, and we'll move to the worldly path. So that is not what we need, and we should have no interest in being in the company of such worldly people. And Swami says, avoid bad company, right? The same thing is repeated here, and it is hard to find out who are good and who are bad and then settle amongst the good. So it is advisable to avoid people and concentrate on spiritual discipline. The human mind is like iron. If it falls into mud, it rusts and it disintegrates. If it falls into fire, it loses dross and becomes pure. Therefore, joining the company of wise people is better than being in solitude. So Swami says sometimes it is difficult to discern between who is good and who is bad. So that will be hard, right? So it is avoidable. It is easy to avoid all people and concentrate only on the spiritual discipline. But the human mind is kind of like iron, so it rusts easily if it falls into mud. But if it falls into fire, it becomes pure. So Swami says, staying with wise people is better than being in solitude. So Swami talks about the example of Narada here. Note how Narada, who was the son of a housemaid, became a sage because he fell in the company of godly people, like and he used the example of Ratnakara, who was a cruel hunter who got the company of the seven sages. So he was transformed into first amongst poets, the Adikavi. Evil company is highly detrimental. A red hot iron ball is capable of causing more damage than a flame of fire. A sinful one is more to be avoided than sin itself. Aspirants have to be vigilant about the company they keep. So here Swami says, sinful people are even more dangerous than sin, and our character is determined by the company we keep. He gives the example of Narada and the Ratnakara and or the Valmiki. Then he says that it's like an iron ball. So even fire cannot burn us as much as an iron ball is able to burn. So we have to be careful about the company we keep, and we have to avoid bad company. And the 19th virtue Swami talks about is the awareness of the distinction between the Atma and non-Atma. The 19th virtue is awareness of the distinction between Atma and non-Atma. Fix your consciousness always on the Atmic reality and discard the body and the senses as unreal and impermanent. Atma is the eternal. So establish yourself only in that and not in the transient, non-Atmic illusions or objects. Life is a struggle to achieve victory over the illusion that haunts. I am the eternal Atma in you and in all. So fix the mind on me and engage yourself in the struggle, confident of victory. So here Swami says we should be able to distinguish between Atma and non-Atma, and we should be able to pursue only those things which are with the Atmic reality, and we should be able to avoid the non-Atmic illusions, and we should be able to understand the truth that Swami is the eternal Atma and he is the Paramatma and he is within all of us, and we should be able to understand this, and we should win the struggle against the non-Atmic illusions, and we should be able to fight and win. So, and the 20th, the last virtue that Swami talks about is vision of the true nature of that. The 20th and the last qualification one has to earn is the vision of the true nature of that, or Tattva Jnana Darshanam, the universal principle of which the particular is but a shadow. It means that the spiritual aspirant should have a keen desire to visualize the universal. So here Swami talks about the bigger picture, like everything is just again the reflection of the Lord, and the particular is actually just a way of seeing the universal. And so we can go back to the example Swami talked about the cloth and the yarn. We'll be able to see the yarn, but the yarn is the same as the cloth, and the cloth is the same as the yarn. And Swami says, of the above mentioned 20 virtues, if honest efforts are made to earn even 2 or 3, the rest will come naturally to the seeker. No special effort is needed to earn them. As progress is made on the path, one acquires not only the 20, but even a larger number of virtues. The 20 are mentioned here because they are the outstanding ones, that's all. Spiritual discipline based on these virtues takes one easily to the goal. That is why Krishna emphasized these ones. So here Swami says, not if the virtues that we are actually intended to acquire are not just limited to these 20, but even if we try to earn 1 or 2 of these virtues, we'll be able to earn all these 20 and even more. And that is the goal, that is the end goal. So that is why these 20 are listed as the primary ones that are needed, but that's it's not limited to just these. So equipped with these, one can realize the self, and there need be no doubt on that. For they lead to the knowledge that the body, the senses, the intelligence, the inner consciousness, all are affiliated with the worldly Prakriti aspect. And one who is distinct from all this is the perfect person or Purusha. So here Swami says that the realization that we come once we go through the process of these 20 virtues, and uh, the realization that happens is that everything, like the body, the mind, the antakarana, and the inner consciousness, everything, all these are worldly, and the real I or the real me is not actually related to these all these things, and I am the Purusha, or the universal aspect that Swami talks about, and these are the Prakriti or the limited aspect. And the perfect person is the one who is aware of the body, Kshetra, and the knower of the body, or the Kshetrajna. When one is able to distinguish between the soul, Purusha, and nature, Prakriti, or which is the same thing between field and knower of the field, one becomes the witness and is free from all touch of want or wish. So Swami says the perfect person is one who knows about the Kshetrajna and the Kshetra, and one who is able to distinguish between the two that we just discussed about. So such a person is free from all kind of want or desires, and he is free from all the 6 qualities that are actually Swami talks about as the Shat Dripus. And such a person is the perfect one, and he is the one who is actually known as the Jnani, or the person who is capable of gaining the wisdom that Swami talks about. And I think with this, we come to the end of chapter 23, Saina. So I think 4 more chapters remain. We have 27 chapters in Gita Vahini. So we'll start with chapter 24 in the next week. Sairam, everyone. If there is any point to be discussed, we can have a discussion now. Sairam, I think Andy is not available this week, and so if there are no points to be discussed, maybe we can conclude for this week. I mean, conclude the session. Okay, Sarah. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sairam, everyone.